And we're back with our final segment of the Screen Team, all brought to you by 33 Productions, Whitworth Gift Chest Jewelers, and Poplar Bluff Drywall. All right, guys, it's the number one movie in America right now. It's Guardians of the Galaxy, and of course, this is Marvel's latest installment into the world of movie magic. And once again, they pulled off some magic and made a very, very good film. Jamie, Guardians of the Galaxy. This is obviously based on a comic book.
Yeah.
How old is the comic book? Are you familiar?
Well, the actual characters, Guardians of the Galaxy as a whole, go back way to like at least the 70s.
Oh, really? So they've been around quite a while then.
Yeah. And then they've had their own book a couple of different times, and it's been in different configurations of the group. Star-Lord, the main character in the movie, I think has been a part of them for the most of the time, that there are the Guardians of the Galaxy. But there's always a big guy, and there's always like a smart aleck, and there's always a chick or two. It's kind of it's one of those formulas where they can just recycle the characters over and over. Whether it's the Defenders or the Avengers or the X-Men, and you just mix and match characters and put them out there. But since it's in outer space, you kind of have to be a little more selective about who's in the Guardians.
Yeah.
So. But they've really hit it out of the park this time, I think.
So, Jake, are you on board with that? Did you like this film?
The comic book movie I've been waiting for since they started making comic book movies.
Wow. What have you been waiting for?
Something that makes fun of itself in a good way while also telling a good story.
Yeah.
All right,
and this movie did that. It did all those things. And you know what? It didn't have a super convoluted plot.
Yeah.
It was just like, basically, here's what needs to happen. You know what? And you just kind of learn as they learn as it happens. There's not a big scene that lines it out at the beginning, like, kind of like Hunger Games kind of does in a way, and which isn't really a comic book movie, but, a lot of your sci-fi-esque movies,
fantasy stuff,
they start out, even with Star Wars, with the scroll at the beginning. You have to be caught up to speed at least a little bit before you start this movie. This movie does one of the better movies I've seen in a long time that makes fun of itself without making too much fun of itself.
Yeah, without being
it can make fun of itself and take itself seriously at the same time. That's a perfect formula for a movie for me. So, there's lots of great gags in this movie, and the effects, you know what? You don't notice they're there. You don't notice their special effects.
You really don't. Even though there's green and blue people walking around.
Yeah, special effects and a good mix of practical effects and there's a ton of CG in it, of course, but a good mix of effects like that to the point to where you don't notice the effects because the story and what's going on is being played out so well.
Yeah.
So what is the basic story of this film? You've got like these 5 criminals, I guess is a good way to
for lack of a better term. Yeah.
And they found like this, what is this orb or this special kind of gem that can really destroy universes and galaxies and stuff like that. And they find themselves being the good guys in this film, trying to stop the main villain in this from destroying galaxies. So that's pretty much the general theme of the film, correct?
Yeah. And that's about as basic as you can get. Powerful object, bad guy wants it to do his bidding.
MacGuffin,
and then like the anti-heroes like save the day or whatever. So it's you could probably go to look at Joseph Campbell's stuff about all the archetypes, and it's all in there.
So, Jamie, you saw this with your kids, correct?
Yeah, I did.
How did that work for you?
They really liked it. I've got a 5-year-old and a 12-year-old. Mm-hmm. And at first, the 12-year-old didn't want to go, which I thought was kind of funny because it's like every time the commercials come on, they're like, "Oh, cool, Guardians of the Galaxy."
Yeah.
And then he's like, "No, I want to go." And then we took the 5-year-old, of course, too, and he was glued to it, man. He loved the talking raccoon and the tree guy, and he was digging all the explosions and the spaceships and stuff, so. Just like any kid would.
Yeah. So what'd you think of the language in the film?
Well, yeah, I had seen a couple of people warn on Facebook and even in some of the reviews that there's some language in it, so be careful with kids. It wasn't as bad as it probably could have been. Consider the rating, and I've seen some other PG-13s that had a lot worse language in them, actually.
Right.
But there's a couple things they could have cut out, where it said, bleep or bleep, and I just bleep myself. But and then they could have substituted, the PG word, and it would have been fine.
Yeah.
It's not like those cop shows that go, listen here, craphead, and it's supposed to be a tough guy and he just looks really ridiculous. It could have been like the opposite of that, so. But I'll occasionally let a swear word slip around my kids, so they're not foreign to it. But
yeah, I grew up with sailors, so it's no big deal.
No big deal to you. But no, they enjoyed it, and I don't think they're going to go around just swearing because it was in the movie. They enjoyed the talking raccoon and all the crazy stuff. So
I pretty much enjoyed everything about this film, man. I liked the dialogue. I liked the special effects. I liked the characters. I thought they were all just very, very funny, and even Batista's character, I liked him. I thought Batista did a darn good job too.
He really did. And the character Drax from the comics, going way, way back, the original Drax, he was a lot different back then when they first introduced him to the story. Mm-hmm. And maybe they've revamped him, because they've revamped all the Marvel characters a zillion times now. That's some of them are 60 years old.
Right.
I mean, as far as the character existing. So that you got to do something with them. And the earlier Drax was a lot more like hey, you don't mess with this dude, and you don't mess with this dude because he's huge and imposing. But he came off as kind of a goofus at times, and you're like, well, I don't know. And I just remember the older character, the older version of it. So it seemed a little odd to me, but I thought he did a great job. I'm always hesitant about seeing wrestlers trying to act.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
But and Lee Pace,
yes,
as Ronan. Holy cow, that was a great villain.
Yeah,
I really like Lee Pace. The first time I saw him was on Pushing Daisies.
He was awesome in that.
And
I love that show.
But everything he's been in ever since then, I've really liked him in, and this was no exception. He really took that character and just punched you in the head with it.
I don't think we're giving anything away by saying this, but you see one of the big bad villains, Thanos, in this film, in a little bit more of a more than just an Easter egg here. What do you guys think of Thanos?
Pretty imposing, and Del Toro is really good at doing that kind of thing. So.
It wasn't him.
Yeah, that wasn't him. That's right.
Del Toro was the
collector.
The collector. That's right.
Is it
Josh Brolin?
Josh Brolin.
Josh
Brolin is Thanos. Yeah. Which I'm sure that's motion capture.
I get stuff mixed up. Right? That's an imposing character. That first close up, you just know it's like, all right, you don't mess with this guy.
Yeah.
I was really surprised with Del Toro's character, the collector, that he didn't have a bigger part. He just seemed to be like, "Hey, I'm here," and then that was kind of it.
Well, that's how they've treated the collector in the comics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all through the years, and the collector goes back even further than Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, really?
Because he appeared in Fantastic Four and stuff, and Thor and things like that.
Yeah,
and which those comics go back to the '60s. But the collector was always kind of an oddball character, because that's all he did. He went around the universe collecting these trinkets or people or aliens, and just whatever he thought was interesting.
Right.
And that's how and to me they played it very well. They played it a lot like they did in the comics, because he's kind of a smooth guy. He kisses Gamora on the hand, but then he's like, "Yeah, I got all this credits and I want this thing, so it's going to be mine."
Yeah,
that's his gig, the collector.
It's one of those characters that kind of ties every version of the Marvel universe together, I guess, with all the different.
Yeah,
all the different storylines and all the different characters. I mean, because you see stuff that's kind of fourth wall breaking almost in there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So let me ask you guys something. This is obviously a fun movie for comic book fans. It's a fun movie for kids who like spaceships and things blowing up. For non-comic book fans, do you think they'll dig a movie like this?
I think so. I've always had an interest in comic book and basic arcs and storylines, just because I like good storytelling, and comic books, are one of the best ways to tell a story, because you get a visual representation and just enough dialogue to know what's going, to know what you need to know, and not a whole lot of explaining.
Yeah.
And I don't think this movie pulls that off really, really well. I mean, you just jump into this movie and it's fun. It's a really fun movie.
So
I think just about anybody'd have fun with it.
Yeah. So let's just talk about your wife. She's not a big comic book fan, correct?
She's not a big fantasy movie fan at all. She more likes the rom-coms and the dramas and maybe the horror stories, and stuff like that, stuff that makes her jump. But when it comes to high fantasy movies like that, or even going to, moderate fantasy or fictional fantasy like Indiana Jones, she's just not big on it. That kind of adventure thing just doesn't float it for her. But I think I think she would really like this movie. I think because of the cast and because of the dialogue, and it just moves. It just continually moves. There's not any real slow spots.
What about you, Jamie? You think the average Joe will like this film?
I think so. Yeah, if especially if they do like some, they don't even have to like a lot of sci-fi or fantasy stuff. But if they were fans of Star Trek or Star Wars, even, and things like that, and even if they liked something like The Last Starfighter, there's that kind of thing going on in this, where you take a guy who's kind of not really there to save the day, and then you make him save the day.
Joseph Campbell, hero's journey.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. It's all about Joseph Campbell, this show.
Pretty much every adventure movie. So definitely, I would suggest this to just about anybody. If you like going to the movies and you want to see a good movie, that's going to entertain you the whole time, it's not going to, you're not going to feel like your butt sore after just because you sat through this movie.
If you just saw Llewyn Davis and you want to get picked up.
Exactly. I really, really enjoyed this movie and been waiting for a movie in modern times, in the past few years like this for quite a while.
Yeah.
I tell you what, man, I want to give Marvel some credit, because they did such a good job marketing this film.
Yeah.
Because when this film was first announced, it's like, I didn't know these guys, so I was like, who is Guardians of the Galaxy? What are they about? But once that first trailer came out and everything since then, I was like, dude, I want to see. I'm all about this. So
I gotta see this.
Yeah, so I think Marvel did a spectacular job of promoting this film and making people want to see it, and obviously it's worked because it's been number one. So
yeah.
Fun sci-fi movies seem to be coming back.
Yeah, thank goodness for that, too. Guardians of the Galaxy, it's out in theaters now. Jamie and Jake, thank you guys so much for doing the Screen Team this week, man. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Coming up next week, we'll have Sabrina and Laura on the panel, and we'll be doing Sabrina's picks, and definitely a lot different than what we've had this week. We're going to be reviewing her personal pick, My Girl, with Macaulay Culkin, on DVD, kind of a Hunger Game-esque type of film called Divergent. We'll review that, and on theaters we'll review Step Up All In. I might have to be sick for that one. That's coming up.
I will give you this: if the Step Up movies were just dancing, they would be entertaining. They'd only be about half hour long.
Yeah,
and that's all I need. I can respect cool dance moves.
Yeah. We'll talk to you about those movies next Saturday. For Jamie, Jake, and Chris, we are the Screen Team on today's Talk 930 KWOC.